Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Founders Grid, sponsored by Gaber.io. Today we have Ethan. Ethan is the CEO and co-founder of Lightspeed PR. Ethan, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you, Mustafa. Good to meet you. Good to be here.
So, a brief background about yourself prior to Lightspeed PR, then we'll discuss Lightspeed PR.
Sure. I started Lightspeed PR in 2013. We just hit 7 years, but before that, I was the communications director at Samsung Electronics in New Jersey. I oversaw all North America product launches, of which there were many. And I managed 5 PR agencies for different product categories. I did that for several years. And before that, I was at Edelman Public Relations for almost 15 years.
Nice, interesting journey. And what was the motivation, the drive of leaving the corporate world and becoming an entrepreneur? What was the main drive behind it?
Could you say the question one more time? It cut off.
So what was the main motivation of leaving the corporate world and starting up your own venture, becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I really felt like I had been part of 2 massive organizations. I mean, Edelman is, anybody who knows marketing and PR knows Edelman is one of the biggest PR firms in the world. And Samsung is, of course, the biggest tech company in the world. So those were both amazing experiences and amazing organizations. But rather than being a small part of a massive organization, let me see what I can do by creating my own entity, something that I built from scratch. And so that's where Lightspeed came about, along with my business partner, Amanda Proscia, who had a similar trajectory. She came from Burson Marsteller and American Express. And we said, hey, let's join forces and make this. And it's been great.
Got it. So, and how's the journey been so far? The first 2-3 years are the critical ones, but 7 years now, congratulations on that. But how was the journey? Was it smooth all along, or it had its turbulence and everything?
Oh yeah, there's turbulence. I mean, but that's what makes it fun, right? Never boring. It's really been a great experience. It's been great being my own boss and working with the clients that I want to work with and charting our own course. I'd say the biggest challenge was not what I thought it was going to be. I thought the biggest challenge was going to be getting business, getting clients. Turns out that's I'm not going to say it's been easy, but it's not the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge has been around talent and staffing up all the work that we get. And that's why it's so interesting to talk to you about remote working, because that ties into that.
Got it. So I'm sorry, I have my videos on pause because I've been getting a lag since morning. So I'm just kind of like, but COVID, trying to make the conversation much more relevant towards recent times, right? So how has it affected your business? Because for some it has been a catalyst, for others it hasn't been. And what are the mechanisms you're using to surface through it?
Yeah, well, one of the great things about PR is that certainly PR is impacted by the larger macroeconomic factors, but not quite as much as some of the bigger expenses like advertising. Companies tend to still, by and large, need PR. We have lost some clients. Some clients had to go on pause, so we went on pause. There have been some supply chain issues. But on the other hand, we've also gotten a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of companies doing amazing things to help contribute to the fight against coronavirus and to the recovery. So a lot of companies have come to us with help promoting that. And so we've been telling a lot of great stories. You can check our website and see some of that. But overall, I'd say right now we're about where we were in March, which is quite remarkable. We took a little bit of a downturn and then we bounced back. So I'm quite pleased. It could be a lot worse. In terms of tools to kind of manage it, I mean, the good news for us, we've been all about remote working since the beginning. Lightspeed's always been a virtual agency. They're all virtual now, but we did it by choice. We did it strategically. So from day one, back in 2013, it's always been a remote work setup. And we did that quite deliberately because we wanted to, number one, keep our overhead down. But number two, it gave us access to talent that we otherwise never would. There are people who don't want a full-time job, people who don't want to work in an office, people who might have small children or might have other things that they do, other jobs or other hobbies. Maybe they want to work part-time, and maybe they want to work in a remote location. So our talent pool is anybody. It always was, and it always will be. So we're not competing with the elements of the world on who we hire. We're hiring people who don't want to work in an office. So actually, once coronavirus took hold in March, for us, we just kept on doing what we're doing. The big change has been how we interface with clients. They're now catching up to where we have always been, and they're now getting comfortable with using Zoom like we're doing now, and other types of video conferencing technologies. I mean, we're using everything, Meet, you name it, Google Meet and Microsoft Teams, WebEx. We have to use everything because our clients all use different platforms. But we've always been skilled at that, and it's never been an issue. I do have a couple of suggestions. Would this be a good time to provide them?
Yeah, sure. Because my last question would be prior in regards to companies on how to build better PR. But if you have any suggestion apart from that, sure, please.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things on the kind of remote work side. First of all, I think it's really important to get your setup correct. And I see a lot of people with terrible setups. First and foremost, you want to get your audio right. And I'm on calls all the time where people are, they're using their iPhone headsets or the microphone built into their laptop. And, you're just not going to get good audio. I'll show you what I'm using. So this is a Blue Yeti. This is, it's about $120. This is not a luxury item, but this is what professional podcasters and radio hosts use. So this way it captures my audio, but you can set it to be monodirectional. So my kids are crying over there, you're not going to hear it. Wow. So something like that. You don't have to go to this extreme, but some kind of dedicated microphone that plugs into the USB on your PC, I highly recommend. And the other thing that I would recommend, I'll show this to you also. This is called a Loom Cube. And what it is, it's a USB light, but it creates a really good glow. It makes you look a little bit more warm, and especially if I'm going to turn it off and you can see the difference. So it's not a dramatic difference, but it just gives you a little bit of light, just like they do on movies. And this is especially good if you're in a dark room. I'm on a lot of calls where people are sitting in dark, dingy rooms, and this kind of stuff makes an impression. So you want to sound good and you want to look as good as you can. I'm not saying go to makeup and hair, but just a couple of those things can really help. And obviously getting a good quality camera, getting an HD 4K if you can camera. The camera that's built into your laptop might be inferior, so plugging in a good external camera can help too. So those kinds of little things just on the technology. You're a technology company, so I thought I'd get into that. I have a couple of more tips just about how to do calls well. I'm just going to say this, just really a couple of things. First, the most common mistake that everybody makes on their Zoom calls is they're looking at themselves the whole time. People want to make sure that they're, in frame and that there's nothing in their teeth. You have to get past that. You should be paying attention to everybody else in the room, and not yourself. And look at the camera, not at the screen. Right now I'm looking at the camera. If I look at the screen, my eyes aren't looking at you anymore. So it's just subtle things like that you want to get past. But it makes a big difference. And the last thing I'll recommend, one of the big shortcomings with something like Zoom, if you're like me and you're on team calls and sometimes there's 10 people on the call, it's hard for everybody to speak up. if you're in a room together, you can use cues. You can clear your throat or even wave and get the floor. It's harder to do in Zoom because people might not be looking at you. So use the chat feature. You can raise your hand there and say, I want to say something. And if you're leading the call, sometimes you have to go out of your way a little bit to engage everybody that's on the call. Ask specific people if they have questions versus does anybody have a question? That way you engage the people who might otherwise have trouble getting involved. So just a few tips from all the years I've been doing this. I hope that's helpful.
No, that is, I'm definitely gonna get that mic for sure. So last question, when it comes down to an advice to young companies, especially the startups, for what PR tips or hacks would you advise to them? Two of them, maybe.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I could do a whole hour on this, but I'll try to keep it.
Yeah.
I'll try to keep it brief and just give you a couple of suggestions. The first thing is, you may not need a PR agency. So just understand first, your goal, you want to get awareness for your company through earned media, right? If you want advertising, you could pay for that. But if you want to get editorial coverage, earned media, you hire PR. It doesn't mean you have to hire a PR agency like mine. It might be overkill. We're a small agency, but still, you might be better off either hiring someone in-house or hiring just a freelancer. You can hire a PR contractor. You can hire an individual. So you just have to decide what the scale is. Someone in-house, a contractor, or a firm. And then within the firm, there's different sizes. So you want to kind of get a sense of what your budget is. If your budget is, an agency like ours, we're starting at around $5,000 a month. So if you're going north of there, you hire, and that's pretty typical of a small agency. If your budget is less than that and you want to hire a freelancer, that has its downsides. A freelancer is one person and you're limited by what one person can do instead of a team. And when they go on vacation, the work stops. There's no backup. But if you want to spend in that kind of, say, 2,000 to 4,000 range, you just bring in a freelancer or a contractor. You can go to Upwork or a website like that to find them. And then if your budget's lower than that, give the work to someone in-house to do. Don't go to an external resource. The other thing I'll say is, in terms of what a startup can do, is make sure you have a good story to tell. A lot of companies come to us and they say, we want to get PR, we want to get the word out, but they're not ready. You need to have a call to action for your audience. Just the fact that you exist and you're doing something cool, you want to give them a website to go to, or something to download, or something to buy, something that they can do, some action you want to provoke. That way you can measure the results and you can get results. But just letting people know that you exist is usually not a good enough reason to do PR. So have that narrative ready, at least the beginnings of one. An agency like mine will help you flesh it out. So those are really the two most important things to do. Kind of get an understanding of what you want to accomplish, and then budget. And then you can decide who to hire.
Got it. No, that's a really valuable advice, Ethan. Thank you so much for being on the show. Take care of yourself, stay safe, and good luck with everything. I'm sure we could have talked for another half an hour, but I need to follow my team's instructions of keeping them all within 12 to 15 minutes. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Mustafa. And if you want to learn more about me, you can go to lightspeedpr.com, and happy to provide advice to anybody who wants it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.